Alright everybody, today we're going to be reviewing Dominion by Rio Games. This is a medieval themed deck builder. The game is good for 2 to 4 players, takes about 30 minutes a game, and it's recommended for ages 13 plus. Before we get started with the game, if you like my channel, please remember to smash that subscribe like button. Smash the like button and hit subscribe. So, the goal of Dominion is to be the player with the most victory points at the end of the game. Players earn victory points by holding victory cards. There's 1 point for every estate card, 3 points for every duchy, 6 points for every province, and in some games, players will incur negative points for holding curse cards. At the beginning of the game, each player is dealt 3 estate cards and 7 copper cards. These cards are collected by the players, shuffled, and put in the player's deck. On the board, we're going to place 7 base cards. This will consist of 3 treasury cards, copper, silver, and gold, 3 victory cards, estates, duchies, and provinces, and a curse card. Note that for the victory cards, we'll have 8 of each for 2-player games, and 12 of each for 3 to 4 player games. For curse cards, you're going to place 10 cards for 2-player games, 20 cards for 3-player games, and 30 cards in 4-player games. Once the 7 base cards are on the board, we're also going to set up 10 kingdom cards. In Dominion, there are a possible 25 kingdom cards to play with, and in each game, you as a group of players will decide 10 cards that you would like to play with. You can select cards at random, you can select from some recommended groups of cards provided in the instructions, or you can choose any combination of cards you think would be fun. This isn't super important which cards you pick. The fun part here is you can change it up in lots of different ways to have lots of different types of games and continue to re-experience the game and play with different types of strategies as you go on. It makes the game less boring every round you play. Dominion is a turn-based game with players taking turns as the active player. At the beginning of an active player's turn, they should start with a deck of cards face down, 5 cards in their hand, and likely a discard pile unless it's their first turn. Each turn will consist of 3 phases, easily remembered by A, B, C. A, action, B, buy, and C, clean. During the initial action phase, a player will play 1 action card from their hand per turn. The exceptions here are if the player has no action cards in their hand, or if a player plays an action card, allowing them to play additional action cards. We'll see that in a minute. Each action card includes the action's name, the action type, and instructions on how to play the action card. During a player's turn, if an action card is placed in play, the instructions on that action card will be put into action. Note that action cards with the action type reaction, such as the moat, cannot be played during a player's action phase. We'll get to these later. Let's look at some example action cards. The militia card is an action attack card. This means that we're going to be doing something to the other players in the game when this card is played. First, we see that the card awards +2 coins to the active player. This means the active player will take a silver card from the supply and place it into their discard pile. We also see that the card forces all other players to discard their hands down to 3 cards. This means players who are unable to prevent this attack by using a reaction card will begin their next turns with only 3 cards instead of the normal 5. The library card is a basic action card. This means it will allow the active player to take an action, but this action will not impact other players in the game. The library card's instructions read, draw until you have 7 cards in hand, skipping any action cards you choose to. set those aside, discarding them afterwards. This card might be played by a player who's hoping to get more coins in their hand for the buy round. We'll cover that round later. Playing the Witch card allows the active player to draw 2 additional cards from their deck into their hand, while forcing all other players to pick up a curse card and place it in their discard pile. Some cards, like the Market card, allow players to do much more during their turn than they usually would be able to. The Market card allows a player to pick an extra card out of their deck, play an additional action card during their action phase, and buy an additional card during their buy phase. When the Market card is in play, the active player also has 1 additional coin to spend during their buy phase. Let's watch an example action phase. Here, the active player plays the Mine action card. The Mine's instructions read, you may trash a treasure card from your hand. Gain a treasure card to your hand, costing 3 more than it. Here we see the active player trash a copper card and upgrade it to a silver card, placing the silver card in their hand. Now let's look at the buy phase. Here, an active player buys 1 card using the treasury cards in their hand. If an action card like the Market is in play, allowing the active player to make additional buys, they would do so at this time. Here we see the active player taking treasury cards from their hand and putting them into play. Here we see an active player taking a silver card and a gold card worth a total of 5 coins. The active player has used these coins to purchase a Market card, which is placed in the discard pile. Once the player has completed their buy phase, they move to the cleanup phase. Here, all cards in play and all cards in the player's hand are moved into the discard pile. The player then draws a new 5 cards from the deck into their hand. I should mention that during an actual game, players will hold their hand in their literal hand, concealing these cards from other players until they're placed into play. Sometimes during the cleanup round, an active player will find that they have less than 5 cards available in the deck. At this point, the player can shuffle their discard pile and move the new pile into their deck, drawing cards from the top of the deck until they have a total of 5 cards in hand. Once the active player has 5 cards in hand, their turn is complete, and the game moves to the next player's turn. The game ends when either all province cards have been removed from the supply, or 3 or more piles of cards in the supply are now empty. At the end of the game, players will count up each victory point from the cards in their deck, hand, and discard pile. Estates are worth 1 point, duchies are worth 3 points, provinces are worth 6 points, and if players have accumulated curse cards during the game, these are worth -1 points. Once each player has totaled up their points, a winner is declared. So that about sums up the rules for Dominion. Obviously, I've gone through rules but avoided a lot of strategy in this video. Does it make sense to buy provinces or duchies? Does it make sense to stock up on coppers and silvers or save up and buy gold? When does it make sense to buy cheaper cards and when does it make sense to buy more expensive ones? Feel free to leave your comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe and Patreon and all that crap. This video is sponsored by no one.